From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Ravens podcast. Paul Mancano and Jonas Shaffer live on a Wednesday in September. Jonas, I'm back.
He's back.
From Paris.
From
you
Paris.
guys, you and Gianna Hunt did a terrific job filling in for me the last couple weeks. 2 excellent podcasts after the Ravens preseason win over the Commanders and the Ravens roster cutdowns and Kyle Hamilton's contract extension. We're not going to rehash those topics, although I do have thoughts on both those topics.
Okay.
Don't worry, Jonas. But I am back from Paris. I will be referring to Notre Dame as Notre Dame from now on. I am going to bring the worst possible college kid who just came back from abroad energy from here on out. So, you say something like yes, and I'm just going to say yes. We, you mean we, yes. You say like very good, I'm going to be like very good. Oh, très bien. Yes.
Weren't there talks of you wearing a beret?
There were talks. They did not get very far. They were preliminary talks. I feel like both of us could rock a beret.
What were your 3 must-dos for when the Ravens inevitably play in Paris in 5 to 10 years? Although the NFL hasn't been very bold about going into Fair Paris or France.
Honestly, I thought about that too, because I was like, there has to have been a game played here that I missed. Like they've done Germany a few times. They've done London. They've done, Brazil. Like surely they've gone to France. They haven't. I don't know if I did follow
right over to Spain.
I followed the NFL France Instagram account and then unfollowed it because it was all in French.
What's up with that? Don't they know that English is the language that makes the world go round?
It is very funny how many people over there, though, speak English. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, there are so many people that you ask if they speak English and they're like, a little bit. And then they speak perfect English.
Yeah, we have a dominant culture.
The English is quite literally everywhere. All right, Jonas, on this podcast today, we're going to be looking ahead to week 1 as well as the entire 2025 season. We're going to be delivering our predictions for the Ravens 2025 season. We have 8 bold takes that we have rated on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of boldness that we're going to give for this year. We've got a little true and false game as well. This is the time where we put our takes on the line and then in 5-6 months get to look back at ourselves and laugh at how terrible they were. Although I will say, I did correctly last year predict that the Ravens would lose in the divisional round to the Bills, and I was right there.
Gianna and I were right too, because we predicted in our bold predictions that they would go 1-1 in the playoffs.
Oh, there you go.
And you weren't completely right because you predicted that the Ravens would make it to the Super Bowl.
I did at one point. The thing is, you throw out a lot of different predictions over the course of the season. Nobody remembers them all. Nobody's just sitting there at home tabulating Paul Mancano's predictions. And one of them is bound to hit.
Sure.
All right, let's start with some injury updates. Jonas, because you've been at the castle the last few weeks while I've been abroad, give us the rundown on who you think is going to be healthy, what we've heard from John Harbaugh about who's going to be healthy for week 1. Let's start with the free agent addition at cornerback, Jair Alexander, somebody who struggles a lot in his career with injuries. Is he going to be ready for week 1?
We'll see. We'll be out there practice in about 2 hours time. He hasn't practiced since August 9th because of a knee injury. I think it's probably good practice for what will be a year of will he or won't we discussions with Jair Alexander. That's just the deal with these guys who are coming off knee surgery, especially someone with the long injury history of Jair Alexander. When we talked to John Harbaugh on Monday, he said he was moving around at practice and working today on quote physical stuff. He said we'll see where he's at Wednesday. He did some things today. So, a couple weeks ago, the expectation was that he would be available for week 1. I guess we'll know a little bit more today. We'll get our first injury report in a few hours and in the late afternoon. Again, they don't need him. This is a Bills team that, likes to run a lot of 2 tight end sets. So even if he were 100% healthy, it's not like he would be on the field for every single play. But if you were looking for omens, him missing week 1 after the very strong camp that he had would definitely be a bad one.
Yeah. How about Patrick Ricard, who has not practiced since August 14th with an undisclosed injury?
Yeah, well, I guess we'll see about that. I think I'm more optimistic about that one just because we haven't gotten any indication that his availability for week 1 would be in any kind of jeopardy. And it's Project Pat. You would expect that it would have been about 3 weeks off. He would be over whatever he's dealing with. We don't really know. We haven't asked John to name it. He hasn't really given us a whole lot there. So you just expect that, again, he would be available. It would be a bummer if he's not there. You miss a guy who's very important for your run game. Derrick Henry's lead blocker. But again, you have Charlie Kohler to potentially fill in the gap there. But for the Ravens to be down to, top end of the league talents in Pat Ricard and Isaiah Likely for week one against this Bills defense would definitely be a bummer.
And finally, Isaiah Likely avoided IR to start the year. That's a good sign. But will he be available week one as he recovers from a foot fracture and surgery on said foot?
Yeah, I mean, we got the nebulous, ambiguous stopwatch emoji last night from Isaiah Likely, which I think raised some hopes that he would be ready for this opener. I just don't think it's going to happen. Ian Rappaport reported this morning that he's not expected to play. I think for a guy who hasn't been on the field for over a month now at this point, even if he were to practice today, I think expecting much from him would be pretty unlikely. If you remember just how limited Mark Andrews was when he came back from his lower body injury in that game against the Chiefs in the 2023 AFC Championship game, wasn't a lot to write home about. I think you expect a much longer return to form for these guys who are coming off these foot fractures, who haven't been on the field very long, who don't have a whole lot of chemistry with Lamar Jackson coming back there. So, we've noticed his slow progression in terms of just what he's doing, walking around, less of a limp, but it still feels like he's a long shot to play Sunday. And it still feels like a long shot that he would maybe even be able to contribute meaningfully in week 2, which is fine because it's the Browns.
And we plan to have another podcast later in the week, probably Friday night, to preview the Bills game on Sunday night. And during that podcast, we will know more about the statuses of these guys from John Harbaugh, hopefully, unless he just chooses to go totally shut down information mode. All right, who's got it better than award this week? Jonas, who does it go to?
It's us. Football's back.
It's actually you for getting me back.
Who's got it better than me because you're back?
Yes.
I thought you were telling us that we're doing bonkers numbers without you.
You guys did very well. The listeners of the Banner Ravens podcast came out in droves to hear Gianna Hahn.
Do you know how much healthier my life was without all the meaningless baseball drivel that you throw at my ears?
Yeah, true. Bigger contract extension, Samuel Basayo or Kyle Hamilton.
That's how you pronounce it, Basayo?
Basayo.
I'm just kidding.
Jeez. Yeah, it's us, the football fans.
Yeah, we get college football back. We get European football back. Did you see any PSG when you were in Paris?
So of course you always have to at some point turn on the TV in the hotel room just to see what kind of TV culture you're getting to experience there. And in Paris, they had European football, and the team that we turned on was the Munich Ravens.
Oh,
yeah, it was like, are you kidding me? I cannot escape the Ravens here in Paris.
What league were they in?
I don't know, some kind of European football league,
but American football.
They were playing not in America, but the rules looked all the same. There was also, we went out to Bayeux and Normandy to look at to go do the D-Day tours. And there was a town called Ravenville. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Ravenville. Jonas, I can't escape the Ravens.
No, why would you?
Yeah. Anyway, we're back. Football is back. Who's got it better then? We got to give out our word of the day as well. Jonas, you picked it this week.
Yeah, vengeance. It's French, kind of, sort of. That this whole episode is just an homage to your indulgent travels with your lovely partner.
Indulgent.
It means punishment inflicted in retaliation for an injury or offense. It's from the Middle English vengeance, which is borrowed from Anglo-French venger, to exact satisfaction for. This is Vengeance Day, baby, even though it doesn't really matter because it's not going to change anything about what happened in the playoffs last year. But I don't know how much these guys in the locker room actually care about vengeance when it's a completely new season, completely new stakes. You'd 10 times out of 10 take a playoff win over a week 1 season opening win. But it's Ravens Bills. It's the chance to right some wrongs. It's a chance to turn a new page. It's a chance to change the narrative, I guess. So why not go with the French word?
Yeah, I thought about creme de la creme if we're talking phrases. Cream of the crop, basically.
Best game of week 1, probably.
Best game of week 1. Maybe the 2 best teams in the AFC. But when all is said and done.
Why are you going with these Italian hands?
It's Italian. There were
should be doffing your beret.
Yeah, true. Didn't get the beret for this. going to be a good week 1 game, but we're going to focus more on the season as a whole on this podcast. And that's why we have 8 bold takes for this season. Jonas, arranged from least spicy to most spicy. And what we did here was we each came up with 4 and we sent it to columnist Kyle Goon, beat reporter Gianna Hahn. They gave us a spicy rating on a scale of 1 to 10. We averaged those out. And when we get to the end of the season, we are going to award points to the takes that were correct and award 0 points to the takes that were incorrect. The idea being the spicier the take, the more points that take is worth. So there are different ways to approach this. If you want to take some layups, do some really easy takes that you think are going to happen, you could, get some cheap points there, or you could take big swings. I think we did a good mix of them here. Jonas, why don't you start us off with your first take, your least spicy of your 4 takes for this upcoming season?
It's the least spicy, but it's probably the most inflammatory, which is that our guy, right guard Daniel Failele, will lead the Ravens offensive line in total snaps.
Wow.
He did this last year. He finished number 1 overall on the Ravens, not just the Ravens offense, the entire team in total snaps. And to me, this is just a testament to how the coaches feel about him. It's a testament to his durability. It's an acknowledgement that other guys on this line might be a little bit more injury prone. We've seen the back injury flare up for Tyler Linderbaum. We've seen Ronnie Stanley have myriad injuries over his career. Andrew Voorhees has a long injury history. Roger Rosengarten, can be pretty durable. I think he was pretty much an Iron Man at Washington. Once he got established last year, he didn't really come off the field. But, this is a guy who the Ravens are committed to improving by getting him reps. And even though he's probably as established as Roger Rosengarten at this point, I just think that with everything that's gone into this offseason, this training camp, there's not really a lot of close competition there. He's probably, I don't know who's closer to quote unquote losing their job, him or Failele, Big Dan or Andrew Voorhees at guard to someone like Ben Cleveland. But Ben had his chance all through camp, couldn't really put up a serious charge. Emory Jones hasn't practiced since basically the Senior Bowl. He's not going to be able to practice until week 5. Eric DeCosta said that he's optimistic about what he could be for the Ravens this year, but it might just be a redshirt year for him. So you put all that together. If he's not coming off the field in any of these games, then it's going to be pretty easy for him to repeat what he did last year.
Yeah, this to me comes down to injury. It's not necessarily a possibility that he comes off the field because of performance, because we saw the Ravens coaching staff stick with him time and time again last year. Yeah. Ben Cleveland, just in their eyes, is not as good and didn't win the job last year, never worked his way into the rotation last year. They bring him back this year, but it is to be a backup. He was never really in consideration, as we could kind of tell, for either of those guard spots. And quite frankly, if you're looking at one area of this team that you really worry about the depth of, it is the offensive line, because they don't have somebody who is a veteran who could step in and be an immediately great replacement. So to me, this comes down to injuries. If Failele goes down at any time, that's off the table. But if we're just looking at if everybody's going to be healthy this year, I don't think that's a bad idea. And especially because I think if they got to a week 18 game and it didn't really matter, Failele might start that game too. I mean, maybe sure. They only have 4 backup offensive linemen right now on the 53, and that could change.
And one of them is Carson Vincent, who got a lot better during the preseason. He seemed to do a lot better when you were out of the country, which is interesting.
Correlation, causation, who's to say?
But still, there's a lot of question marks there along the line, especially, like I said, with no Emory Jones.
So that take is worth 5.5 points if you were to get it. That's what Gianna and Kyle gave it in terms of a rating. I'm glad you mentioned Carson Vincent, Jonas, because he is the subject of my first take, which is that Carson Vincent, the rookie 5th round pick, will be a healthy scratch for all 17 regular season games. The reasoning is that which you just laid out. He is very much a project. He is going to take a long time to get to the point where the Ravens feel good about throwing him in a game. Even with their lack of depth along the offensive line, even with Emory Jones being on the NFI list to start the season, I just don't think they can reasonably play him in a game. And so, yes, he made the initial 53 because I think they wanted to keep him. They feel good about his long-term ability. However, I don't see him being active for any game this season.
Pulling a Nick Samac as you would.
Yeah.
I think they have very different trajectories. Nick Samac on the practice squad, probably a long way from contributing if the Ravens needed him to. I guess the only thing that would get in the way here of this prediction coming true, beyond just him improving by the leaps and bounds that he already has, is the simple fact that Jono Boom is, like Ronnie Stanley, injury prone. So you could have some compounding injury misery there that forces Carson Vincent to be among the 8 or 9 offensive linemen who are activated. It's a realistic possibility that the Ravens just don't have the bodies that they need to get through a game, and he doesn't need to be thrown onto the field for your prediction to come true. He just needs to be activated. And Joe Newboom has dealt with some stuff over the years. There's not a whole lot of other options there at tackle for the Ravens, especially if the Ravens either determine that Emory Jones is better at guard, or they just determine that he's not physically viable as a in-game replacement. So because of how thin this actual 9-man rotation is, I think it's maybe a little bit more realistic, a little bit more probable that Vincent could get 1 or 2 games where he's activated, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's fair. All right.
I mean, like, just baked into this whole thing, and something that we should acknowledge, and we have acknowledged, is the Ravens, according to FTN, which does the adjusted games lost metric, but by far the healthiest offense in the NFL last year, by far the healthiest defense in the NFL last year. They were the healthiest team since like the 2017 Atlanta Falcons, according to Aaron Schatz. So again, that makes what their shortcomings last year, their failures last year, even more galling. I know they lost Zay Flowers once they get to the playoffs, but the injury regression bug is going to come back like a mofo, and it already has with Ardarius Washington, with Adisa Isaac, with Isaiah Likely. It's going to feel like it's unfair at times, but just remind yourself, Ravens fans, that last year it was very, very fair to you in all the best ways until, unfortunately, the playoffs.
Yeah. Best take, this Carson Vincent take is worth 2.5 points. So not a very bold one, but could be a layup for me by season's end. Jonas, your second bolder take.
This one, I think it's a little bit undersold in terms of the point value that I would get, but it would be that Rashad Bateman by season's end is considered the Ravens wide receiver 1 over Zay Flowers. This would be a pretty big gulf for Rashad to cross for this to happen, because not only did he finish with about, I think, 300 fewer yards than Zay did last year, but he also got 30 fewer targets. Obviously, he was an efficiency monster when he got those targets. Despite him being, the target on 2 or 3 of those Lamar interceptions, he still finished with basically like a perfect passer rating, or close to a perfect passer rating, when Lamar targeted him, just because of how efficient he was downfield, because of all the touchdowns that he got. So, based on what we saw in camp, it's really tough for me to draw conclusions about what this year will look like for the Ravens wide receiver room. Zay Flowers, had some flashy plays in training camp last year, but he didn't really dominate. He didn't really dominate this year either. But based on what we saw last year, with him going over 1,000 yards, being a Pro Bowl wide receiver, making some of these highlight reel plays, is that going to mean anything for what the target distribution, the route distribution, the first target, the first look target rate for these guys is? Who knows? But what we know about Rashad is it's now 2 off seasons in a row where he's been healthy. He's been able to develop his chemistry with Lamar. Obviously, he hasn't gone as far as, traveling to South Florida to throw with Lamar, which, would have been nice, but these guys have busy schedules. But, Todd Monken has a familiarity with him that he didn't perhaps in year 1. Lamar, like I said, has more familiarity with him. I think the only thing that could get in his way is just the sheer amount of kind of gimme throws that Lamar is going to take with Zay Flowers. Like if teams are crowding the box and the Ravens have an RPO option and it's the little smoke screen to Zay Flowers out in the flat, then that could be 20 to 30 yards a game of just free kind of access throws that Rashad Bateman wouldn't otherwise get, because Rashad Bateman is almost being taxed for how much bigger he is than Zay, which it's not like he's built like, David Boston out there, but he is bigger than Zay. Zay's, given credit as a more shifty runner. So we'll see. I don't feel great about this. I wish it were higher than 6 out of 10 on the spice scale, but I do think it's possible that based on Rashad's route runner, which I think is better than Zay's, based on his deep field access, which I think is more impressive than Zay's, it's definitely possible that even if he doesn't get 1,000 yards, he is the more reliable, more regular, more feared wide receiver on this Ravens roster.
I would definitely give this a higher than a 6 out of 10. I would give this closer to a 7 or 8 because yes, I think Rashad Bateman has a chance to take another step forward for all the reasons that you mentioned. And I know the Rashad Bateman heads out there will agree, and there are certainly a lot of them. I just think we're discounting how good Zay Flowers was. And you mentioned that Zay Flowers had way more targets than Rashad Bateman. He had 44 more targets.
Oh, 40.
That's insane. Like 44 targets.
It was like 30 more catches, right?
Yeah, it was 74 catches to 45 catches.
Yeah.
So almost 30 more catches, but 44 more targets is a ton. Like,
I know. And there were games where Rashad was coming off like an 80 or 90 yard performance, and then you look at the box score for the next game and it's 2 targets, and they still win by 25 points.
Yeah, I mean, the percentage of catches are very high, and you can include targets as like jet sweeps where Lamar just like grabs it and tosses it and
right.
stuff like that. But like Rashad Bateman is built better to be a wide receiver 1. And I think he plays a valuable role in this offense. I just can't see him racking up the kind of production that Zay Flowers will this year.
But I think
it's possible.
One of the we talked about this, but one of the under the radar storylines that I'm looking forward to exploring is just how does DeAndre Hopkins change everyone else's receiver roles. Again, I think it's pretty clear that Zay and Bateman are top 2, but when the Ravens get into these 3 receiver sets, who does that work to the advantage of? Who does it work to the disadvantage of? What kind of routes are they asking these guys to run? Do defenses treat these guys any differently if they're playing more in the slot than they were before? It's interesting. It's going to be fascinating.
All right, my second take has a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, a 5.5. Frankly, I think this should have been higher because I think people discount just what I'm putting on the table here. But that is that Mark Andrews will score 4 postseason touchdowns this year. 4. Okay. Obviously has 0 in his career.
Oof.
Coming into for last postseason as a total, not a single player had 4 touchdowns.
Is it at least
all
4 or
yes.
exactly 4?
No, at least 4.
Okay.
Yeah. No fewer than 4. Only 2 guys scored 3 touchdowns all of last postseason. Those were Terry McLaurin and Xavier Worthy. So it's very hard to do. And it would require the Ravens to go on a long postseason run.
At least we're both being graded on the same kind of curve.
Yeah. So it would be incredibly hard. I thought this would be very, very high on the. But you think about 4 in, let's say they get the bye and they make a Super Bowl run. 4 in 3 games isn't absurd. He got 11. It's a lot. He got
that's league winning stuff if you're talking about fantasy football pace.
That's true. But I could see this also as a situation where we're looking way down the line here. But imagine the Ravens in a playoff game, like let's say they don't get the bye and they're, playing Joe Schmo in, like a Texans team or like a last year's Pittsburgh team, or it's just obviously a team not of the same caliber, not a true Super Bowl contender. And they go up by a lot and they're like, we got to get this monkey off Mark's back. And they just give him, Todd Monken scripts 2 very easy touchdowns to Mark Andrews in that game, or like they give him 3 touchdowns in one game.
Yeah. I mean, one of my bold predictions for the story that went up this morning with Gianna was just basically the Disney-fied ending to week 1, which is that Lamar's first touchdown pass goes to Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to imagine because I think we're confident in the Ravens' ability to move the ball against this Buffalo defense. And we're pretty confident that Mark's going to get a lot of snaps because Isaiah Likely is not going to be on the field. Maybe Pat Ricard's not going to be on the field. We know just how devastating Mark Andrews was in the red zone last year. He finished with 11 touchdowns for crying out loud. So I think for you to only get 5.5 points for a extremely productive 4 touchdown run, especially considering that's baking into the fact that the Ravens would make it to at least the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unfair to you, but at least we're working with the same judges.
At Kyle, at Gianna, you have been you've been warned. All right, what's your third take, Jonas?
The Baltimore Ravens will make it to. They won't lose until November.
Whoa!
So that means that they are starting at least 8-0, which means that they are beating the Bills in week 1.
Hold on,
Browns in week 2.
This got a 6.5.
Yes,
This should be like an 8. Wow.
Don't know what to tell you. The Lions in week 3, at the Chiefs in week 4.
The Ravens could be 0-1. Like they have a 50% chance of being 0-1.
Texans in week 5, Rams in week 6, Bears in week 8. All of those teams could realistically, besides the Browns, could realistically win at least 10 games this season. So you're assuming that with this take, they're going to lose to one of the Vikings in week 10, November 9th. They're not losing to the Browns again. The Jets in week 12 or the Bengals in week 13.
This is bold. I mean, this is awfully bold.
I just want to lean into the world where every single conversation that we have is talking about the 72 Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
Who was it? The Mercury Morris Dolphins,
who will be popping champagne when the last unbeaten team loses. Yeah, look, I am incredibly bullish on this football team. I think that they are going to win a lot of football games, as we'll discuss near the end of the podcast. For them to start 8-0 would be pretty absurd. It would be incredibly impressive, and I think it's very doable, but it just takes a lot. I mean, we saw last year that how slow the Ravens started. This is a team that started 0-2 last year. And as winnable as the games against Cleveland and Houston and Miami look, and the Jets look on the schedule, the Ravens lost to the frickin' Raiders in week 2 last year. So there's variance, there's weirdness in the NFL. I think they're going to win a lot of football games. I think 8-0 would be pretty absurd.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this with my full chest, because as we'll get into the playoff predictions and the regular season predictions, I do actually have them losing in those first 5 weeks of the season. So I don't think this is that realistic, but that's why it's only getting a 6.5 out of 10. But
that's fair.
Just imagine what the discourse around this team would be if they get to that bye and they're still unbeaten.
Yeah, it would be incredible. All right, my third take, Jonas, has to do with Odafe Oweh and his production this year. Odafe Oweh will be the first Raven with at least 13.5 sacks since Elvis Dumervil had 17 in 2014. That is absurd production, to put it mildly. The last guy with 13 sacks was Nnamdi Madubuike 2 years ago. Last guy with 13.5 came over 10 years ago. I just see all of it clicking for Odafe Oweh this year. And I think there's no question that his sack production has been harmed by the fact that he hasn't been as big. He hasn't been as strong. He hasn't been able to wrap up. He's gotten his hands on quarterbacks in the backfield, but just has not been able to complete the sack. Got bigger, got stronger this offseason. He's entering a contract year. I see it all clicking when it comes to Odafe Oweh. And 13.5 sacks, yes, it's a very, very high total. That's why it's a bold take. It was given a 6.5 by our judges. Or no, a 6. Not even a 6.5. Jonas, what would you rate this take?
It's definitely worthy of a 6. It's worthy of more than a 6, excuse me. I don't know really what to make of the pass rush this year. I think it'll be better than last year, but I could also see it being a situation where no one has double-digit sacks, and like there are a lot of guys in that 7 to 9 sack range, and it just is a team effort, and maybe the pressures are more important than the sacks. We've seen that was the problem last year. You know, the Ravens had they finished 31st in ESPN's pass rush win rate. I'm bullish about what Odafe could be. I think we'll know a lot about what his potential is in week 1, because you're talking about 2 big, burly, imposing tackles in Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown, the bookends for the Bills. Like, they bullied Odafe last year. He really wasn't able to do much. That was the KDN game. That was the Travis Jones game. So if we see Odafe able to weaponize his strength in addition to his speed and all the counters that he has, and we see him getting consistent production against this top 3 offensive line, then like the sky truly is the limit. But if we see him kind of dying on contact, not being able to use his very obvious athletic gifts to beat these guys, then maybe another 9 to 11 sack season is more realistic. Or maybe it's not even that. Maybe it is just a situation where he is taking a kind of backseat role to Kyle Van Noy again. Maybe even Mike Green jumps him in like the obvious situational pass rusher role that the Ravens could have for one of these guys. So very curious to see what Odafe does this year. I think we have talked a lot about what this weight gain might mean for him, but I think the problem for him wasn't just putting on the weight, it's sustaining the weight. I think that is such a huge issue for these guys. Like it's one thing to get to 255 or 260 or wherever he is right now. It's another to actually be committed to getting the kind of calories, the kind of protein that you need, where you don't burn off all of that weight that you need to be the kind of player that you want to be, because you're just exhausted and sick and tired of eating protein bars and protein shakes and big slabs of meat. It's a real issue that some of these guys have.
Yeah, and it's understandable considering what they put their bodies through. There's probably not enough appreciation for just how much you have to work on your body and do ridiculous things that involve more than just going to the gym and working out. All right, your final and hottest take, Jonas, what is it?
By DVOA, so not total yards, not points per game, the Ravens defense will finish higher than the Ravens offense.
Ooh. What if they both finish first?
We can go with the DVOA percentage.
Okay.
If they both finish first, then my prediction about them going through November,
yeah, true,
with that loss will probably come true. Just for context, last year the Ravens finished first by far in offensive DVOA, despite their slow start on defense and their terrible first half pass defense. They finished 9th on defense, so they were top 10 unit on both sides. We're expecting probably a little bit of regression on offense this year because, again, last year they were truly historic in terms of the yards per play, the amount of yards they put up, the amount of touchdowns they scored. Lamar was just a total maestro. But again, will there be some health regression? Probably. Will Lamar have the kind of bad games, more of the kind of bad games that he just mostly avoided last year? It's possible. But when you are looking at this defense, I think we're expecting the run defense to be as consistent as any defense in the league. When I was looking for some other bold predictions for the story that went up today, I completely forgot that the only player to run for 100 yards against him last year was Saquon Barkley, and he barely did that. There were very, very few teams who ran the ball at will against the Ravens. Even though they lost Michael Pierce, I still feel pretty good about what they're able to do. You drop Malachi Starks in at safety, immediate improvement on Marcus Williams and Eddie Jackson, who, by the way, are not on NFL teams as of this recording. You have still some concerns about that third cornerback position, but Marlon Humphrey should have been an NFL top 100 player. Nate Wiggins, we're all expecting to be a potential Pro Bowl caliber player. Trent Simpson should be better. Roquan Smith is still the mastermind of this defense. Zach Orr, I think, has streamlined things. He's made it more intelligible for players. He should be in a better position to correct some of the mistakes that this staff made last year. And yeah, I just think that it's possible that even if maybe this team doesn't have a truly elite player, like a guy who's earning Defensive Player of the Year consideration, like an Aiden Hutchinson or a Pat Surtain or Myles Garrett, that there are just so many guys who are in that B+ to A- range that this defense becomes almost impregnable.
I think the upside for the defense is certainly top 5 in the NFL. I think the upside for the offense is top 1.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the difference. And that's why I think this take is certainly spicy. It earned a 7.5, 7.5 from our judges. I think that could have been higher, but here we are. I just think that I have, for as many reasons as I'll enumerate later, I'm bullish on this defense being much better this year than it was last year. I'm still of the belief that this is maybe the best offense in football again.
Yep.
I mean, they did nothing to regress. They brought back just about everybody. They have so much continuity on offense. They have Todd Monken still scripting the plays amazingly. Somehow he didn't get a head coaching job somewhere else. On offense, if you count Pat Ricard as a starter, the 11 projected starters on offense have combined for 27 career Pro Bowls. 27. And you consider the fact that Lamar Jackson's 28 years old and he could finish his career with like 15 Pro Bowls. So yeah, they have so much talent, so much on offense that I just don't see the defense being better than the offense. But that doesn't mean I don't think the defense will be good. So good take. My final take for you, Jonas. This earned a 7 from our judges out of 10. Has to do with the inside linebackers. My take is the starting inside linebacker next to Roquan Smith in the Ravens' first playoff game this season is not on the current roster.
Oof.
How is this a 7 out of 10? Shouldn't this be an 8 or 9? Not on the current roster. The Ravens kept 5 inside linebackers. So this is a bold and spicy take. Do I really believe it? Probably not. Trenton Simpson has been used a lot. He's been talked about a lot as a guy who learned from last year, a guy who is going to be better this year. I still don't see the kind of confidence in him that the coaching staff would be showing Patrick Queen, that would be showing somebody that they really believe to be starting. I think that they didn't do a whole lot to meaningfully upgrade the inside linebackers this offseason, and they lost 2 in Chris Board and Malik Harrison that they relied on a lot last year. They brought in Jake Hummel, who's a special teams ace. They drafted Teddy Buchanan on the 3rd day. It's very hard for rookies to contribute. They kept Jay Higgins IV, who's also a rookie, undrafted. I don't believe that this team really, truly believes in Trenton Simpson as of this moment. And I think there's a very good chance that the Ravens either acquire somebody via trade, like they did with Roquan Smith a few years ago, pick somebody up off the street. But I think that there is a path to where the Ravens at the end of the season have somebody else next to Roquan Smith.
Do you think if you'd said that the Ravens playoff starter next to Roquan Smith will be CJ Mosley, that would have gotten like a 7.5 out of 10?
that would have been higher if I name a specific player. Yeah.
Yeah. The bar for anything above a 7 or 7.5, I guess, is pretty high. It's possible. I think the fact that Jay Higgins is on the team and played pretty well in the preseason, obviously he was like PFF's highest rated off-ball linebacker, means that I guess there's a possibility if they skip right to the edge of the depth chart and go for him, if they don't like Buchanan, if Trenton Simpson's a disaster. Obviously, Jake Hummel, I think, has played like 120 defensive snaps over his career. So I don't think he would be a viable frontline starter for a playoff contender. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a consideration. I guess I wonder how much draft capital the Ravens would be willing to part with to acquire a inside linebacker at the trade deadline. That would be definitely interesting. But, we know that based on the offenses that the Ravens will see over the first 2 months or so, there are going to be a lot of smart coordinators who are looking at that middle of the field with their microscope and trying to do everything possible to take advantage of Trenton Simpson, to put Roquan through the kind of hell that he was put through last year. I mean, Buffalo with their tight ends, Detroit with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Kansas City with Kelsey, and just all the machinery and wizardry that the Chiefs have. Obviously, don't have to worry about Rashee Rice, who gave Roquan a lot of trouble last year. Don't really have to worry about Houston, but the Rams with everything that they have. Sean McVay, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. So a lot of guys who can do a lot of damage over the middle of the field. And if the Ravens just cycle through these guys, all of whom turn out to be pale imitations of what they want to be, of what they want the guy next to Roquan to be, then it's definitely possible that the answer for that second linebacker spot is not in Baltimore, or alternately, they just lean into an unhealthy amount of dime personnel and they only have one linebacker on the field, which is, I guess, also a consideration.
All right. Well, check back with us in February to see if those takes hit. Let's do a quick true or false game. Jonas, you came up with 3 propositions. True or false?
Just kind of getting the sense for what is possible, what is likely this season. Derrick Henry, coming off a 1,900-yard season on the ground, more likely to have 2,000 rushing yards or 1,000 rushing yards.
You mean, he'll have at least 1,000.
Yeah, he's more likely to have over 2,000 or under 1,000. True or false?
Oh,
he's
over
more likely
2,000.
to have 2,000 than fewer than 1,000.
I mean, health is,
it's just like one high ankle sprain knocks you out for 6 weeks.
Yeah. However, I still think it's for a running back, there's still an absurdly high chance that he has over 2,000. So You know what? I'll bet on the upside.
I think when I checked a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, his over under on FanDuel or DraftKings or something was only like 1350 or 1450. It was nowhere close to what he finished with last year. I didn't really get that because everything that the Ravens did last year, all the infrastructure that they had, is back. You could argue that they'll have a better run blocking offensive line than they did last year. So for the line to be that low was surprising. Maybe they are buying into the narrative that he is going to fall off an age cliff, or that the emergence of Keaton Mitchell is going to cut into that snap share. But I just feel like we're at a point in the careers of both Derrick Henry and Lamar where Derrick Henry, because of what he's shooting for in terms of like the total career yardage records, is more important to him than Lamar is, than like the rushing game statistics, rushing game productivity of Lamar. He's not going to want to have as many design carries. He's not going to want to be scrambling as often as he did last year. So it just seems like Derrick Henry's in a position where he could have as much tonnage as he did last year.
What's your next true or false?
Mike Green, rookie second round pick, will finish with more sacks than Kyle Van Noy, who led the Ravens last year with 12 and a half.
More sacks this year than Kyle Van Noy had. It will have this year, not last year. I think very, very high. I think this is a true. Talk about guys who are going to fall off the age cliff. We've been predicting it for years, and it hasn't happened with Kyle Van Noy. Just as it hasn't happened with Derrick Henry. It's going to come at some point. Mike Green has all the ability. He has all the talent. And to me, no, I don't see him being a 10-sack guy in his rookie year. That would be a little ridiculous because of Odafe Owe in front of him and because they're going to work him into the rotation with Kyle Van Noy. But by season's end, I think they're going to feel a lot better about Mike Green as a player than Kyle Van Noy, to the point where they let Van Noy go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a free agent after this year.
Yeah,
so
he let him walk.
That's definitely a realistic possibility. I'm a little bit wait and see on this. This is truly, I don't know. I think I would probably lean to KVN just based on the track record. He's got over 20 sacks over the past 2 years. When Mike Green did go against bigger, stronger, more finely tuned athletes in the preseason, he wasn't as dominant as he was in that first game against the Colts. So we'll see. He still is a relatively undersized guy. I think he's going to be able to, win a surprising amount of snaps based on his run defense. That really wasn't an issue, and that will mean more opportunities for him to actually get to the passer. But I just don't know yet what his role will be in these obvious passing downs, because they have so many guys. They have so many different ways of potentially affecting the passer. And I guess we'll know pretty early on just how highly the Ravens think of Mike Green and just where Mike Green's athleticism stacks up to the true blue bloods, the true greyhounds in this NFL who really just have it so easy because of their elite athletic traits.
All right. Final true or false?
The Steelers with Aaron Rodgers are the biggest threat to the Ravens in the AFC North, more than the Bengals.
So the Steelers, to me, have the widest range of outcomes that they've had in recent history because of Aaron Rodgers. This is an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. The unstoppable force is Aaron Rodgers' path to ruining his reputation at the end of his career, his path to tanking teams as he did with the Jets last year. I have very little faith at this point in 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers. I think that his issues off the field have the chance to really finally, kind of ruin Mike Tomlin's streak of being 500 or better. But you can't count against Mike Tomlin. So could they have 10 wins again and sneak into the playoffs? Absolutely. It's Mike Tomlin. He's built such a solid infrastructure there. The Bengals, meanwhile, also have high variance because that offense is going to be superb again. That defense is going to be terrible again. In terms of the bigger threat to the Ravens, I still think it's the Bengals. I still will take the offensive firepower in Cincinnati over the old, decrepit Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I would also go with the Bengals slightly. I think the two units that I'm most curious in just outside of Baltimore are that Steelers offensive line, because there's a chance that 4 of those 5 starters are above average dudes, with Troy Fautanu, their center, their guard, all young guys last year who really impressed. Sayamalu at left guard is obviously a proven entity. And then with Cincinnati, just can you get some of these young guys that you've invested serious draft capital in to do anything, not just rush the passer next to Trey Hendrickson, but also defend the run, which is something that they conceivably couldn't do during the preseason. So I'm willing to bet that the Bengals having a reliably awesome offense and the possibility of Al Golden bringing in some amount of change that helps this Bengals defense, which has looked so decrepit for the past couple of years. If they have a top 3 offense and a top 20, 23 defense, that's probably enough to inch them ahead of the Steelers. I know the Steelers have invested a lot in their defense, and they have a very, very, very capable defense, but there are just so many questions at so many different spots on that offensive side. And, I'm just willing to bet more on the quarterback in Cincinnati than I am on the quarterback in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to our record predictions and our postseason playoff predictions as well. As for a final 17-game slate, what do you think the Ravens' record will be, Jonas?
I'm not saying this with my full chest. I just didn't want to go with 13-4 like you, so I went with 14-3. I think only losses are to the Lions at home, at the Vikings, just because of the Brian Flores crazy factor, and that receiving room, if JJ McCarthy is even competent, could be crazy. And then the Packers just near the end of the year. That's a team with a lot of scary potential on both sides of the ball. So 14-3.
I've got 13-4, and I honestly might have opted for 14-3 instead. I think this is going to be a very good football team. They have their only losses at Kansas City, at Cleveland, because why the hell not? And at Cincinnati and at Pittsburgh to end the season with all their starters resting. How far do you have them going in the playoffs?
I have them going to the Super Bowl, but losing. And that feels like a cruel half measure based on everything this Ravens fan base is expecting and hoping for. When our official Super Bowl NFL predictions come out tomorrow on thebanner.com, but
where you can subscribe $1 for 6 months.
My reasoning was just like, I feel almost victim to Stockholm syndrome with this narrative about the Ravens. Like, I can't imagine a world where the Ravens aren't the subject of, they just don't have it, discussions on sports talk radio and ESPN and First Take and whatever is playing on FS1 right now. It just, I very much believe in the potential of this team. I believe Lamar is a Super Bowl winning, capable quarterback, but I just can't get to the point yet where I am predicting a championship parade through Baltimore, because I've been so scarred by everything that I've seen since 2019, when they were the best team in football, and 2023, best team in football, and last year, where they were arguably the hottest team coming into the playoffs. Not even a Super Bowl championship, not even a Super Bowl appearance among those 3 seasons. So would it surprise me if the Ravens won the Super Bowl? Absolutely not. I just am beholden to my own experiences of seeing this team fall flat in unexpected ways. And if they got to the Super Bowl and lost to a ridiculously talented Eagles team, or ridiculously talented Packers team, or potentially ridiculously talented Lions team, it wouldn't be a disappointing season. I think objectively you could be disappointed, but I don't think it would be a disappointing season because of everything that would represent for what this franchise, what this team, what this quarterback, what so many stakeholders in this franchise would have accomplished. They need to raise a banner besides an AFC North championship, and winning the AFC in a conference this stacked would, I think, be something that you could feel really, really good about.
I have them raising that banner. I have the Ravens winning the Super Bowl. Don't look back at any of my previous predictions, especially those for the 2025 Orioles, if you want to feel good about this prediction. I did predict the Orioles would win 95 games. I think this team has it all. I really do. I don't see them being worse than any team in the NFC. I think Jordan Love and the Packers are going to have a great season. That's why I have them going to the Super Bowl. But Lamar's better. If not now, when? Sure, but it could also be never. There are also a lot of teams out there that don't win championships that have great players. So to say if not now, when, it could be never. However, I just think they have the best team, top to bottom, the best roster, that nobody has their combination of star level talent and depth in the NFL. That depth will probably be tested, as we just said early. I just think they win it all. I think they finally do it this year.
You don't think the Eagles are as hyper talented and as deep at key spots?
They lost like 7 starters on defense.
I know, but they have. I mean, like Moro Ojomo is everyone's pick for a breakout, and they just I guess the big difference is the ultimate force multiplier is quarterback, and the Ravens have Lamar, and the Eagles have Jalen Hurts, who could be a dark horse MVP candidate, but he doesn't have the kind of transformative effect that Lamar or Josh or Mahomes does.
Well, and I think what the Ravens have in their favor is continuity. I mean, to have both coordinators back is a massive step up. The Eagles lost their offensive coordinator. There are a lot of teams in football, like the Lions lost both their coordinators. That's a team that a lot of people have taking a step back this year, and another team that has struggled with injuries. But the Ravens have brought back just about everybody on offense, and their defense is mostly the same with added Malachi Starks and Mike Green. And Zach Orr is going to be a more emboldened, better Zach Orr. I just see this team as an even better version of last year's team. I see them doing it.
It's totally realistic. We were just talking before we hopped on that everywhere you turn, we are in the throes of NFL prediction season. You go to NFL.com. They are by far the most popular Super Bowl pick. You turn on your favorite, broad look NFL podcast, and the Ravens are typically the team that you hear the most expected to come out of the AFC North, if not win it all. So, got an email this morning from someone pumping a Terrell Suggs interview. He's invoking the word Super Bowl or bust. Didn't really resonate as him saying it, but he's saying as the representative of the Ravens fan base, it is Super Bowl or bust. Those are probably the 4 most toxic words in the Ravens locker room right now. But those are the expectations when you've got this talented a team, this deep a coaching staff. It's tough to. It would be tough to accept another divisional round or even AFC Championship game run flame out.
Certainly would. All right, let us know what you think of our predictions. Write us a 5-star review, and I'll read it out here on the show on Apple Podcasts. At Jonas_Shaffer is his handle. I'm at Paul Mancano and at Old Banner Sports. We will have another episode later this week, probably dropping sometime late on Friday, just when everybody wants to listen to a podcast. Is like Friday at 8 o'clock, to listen to our predictions and our preview of the Bills game in week 1. Thanks so much for tuning in.